Hi, my name is Max Aulick, and I'm the CEO of Ignyte. We work with some of the most innovative defense companies in the world, helping them with their cybersecurity strategy. Today, we're here at the Jet Zero's headquarters, and we're going to hear from some of the most innovative leaders in the space on how they manage their cybersecurity. Mehul, welcome. It's so nice to finally meet you in person. I know we've been working together, Ignyte in partnership with Ground Control. I want to know the origin story. So tell me how you got started and then help me understand the mission of your company.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Max. The mission of Ground Control is really a personal one. I spent the last decade working in my family business, which is in PCB manufacturing. So we manufactured circuit boards for everyone from the defense primes to the new age space companies to Apple and Google. And although we were a critical part of these very, very important supply chains, our actual processes and most manufacturers we knew were very paper-based, were very inefficient, and really lacked the digitization that we've seen in other industries over the last 20, 30 years. And so really the goal of ground control is how do we bring efficiency and visibility across critical supply chains for industries like aerospace and defense, automotive, regulated industries like that. And the place we started was with what we thought was one of the most underserved parts of manufacturing, quality. As you may know, working in compliance and security, quality is often an afterthought. It's often a reactive in nature when it really should be proactive. And what we started with was a product that helps automate quality documentation to make sure it can be completed more efficiently, more accurately, and kind of bring visibility throughout the aerospace and defense supply chain.
Well, Mehul, thank you for that. I know you mentioned security and compliance, very reactive. It's always an afterthought. You guys took a very different approach. So tell me a little bit about how you're setting security or just strategic priorities in business when it comes to security, compliance, things that organization really are doing in a reactive way, but you guys took a very different approach. So talk to me about that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like I said, growing up in the family business, I kind of knew from day one, anyone that builds software in this space needs to be ready to deal with very sensitive data like ITAR data, like CUI data. And so from day one, we started with an architecture that we knew would grow into those, standards that would be set over time. So we started out in the government cloud. We got our ITAR registration. We got our NIST 800 registration. And we started to hear an inkling of this thing called FedRAMP. And to us, the data we process and store, we take it very seriously. It is, across the defense primes, across the manufacturing supply chain. And we want our customers to know that we value their data and we will protect it and do right by them. So we wanted to be proactive and really do whatever was necessary. And in this case, it meant going after our FedRAMP Moderate equivalency.
That's fantastic. Yeah, because I think the way we met is through a customer. And then after we started talking, we realized, man, we got a lot of customers. We're serving essentially the same industrial base, which is great. So talk to me about FedRAMP. How has that gone in terms of the experience, the importance of it? Because to your point, majority of our customers are serving ultimately our country, the larger national security ecosystem. So I commend you for that decision to dive in a little bit early, but talk to me about how the experience has been and why did you jump into it? Because it's pretty daunting.
Yeah, I won't lie. It's been very intense. I'll go all the way to the beginning. We started out by going directly to what you would consider, the top of the top. We looked at Palantir's FedStart program. We looked at Second Front's Game Warden program. And we found that for a company as small as ourselves, we're only 13 people. Those were prohibitively expensive and did not give us the control we wanted as we grew out our software platform, added more systems, added more modules. So then we took the other approach and went all the way to the, brand new companies who were claiming they could get us FedRAMP within a few months. And we felt the opposite problem there. We didn't want to be an early adopter for something that's so critical to our infrastructure and to our customers. And that's where we, talked to a few customers of ours who recommended Ignyte. And that experience has been incredible for us. As someone who I personally am not in the day-to-day of the FedRAMP certification process, the readiness side of things, but working with our CTO, we see that you guys have kind of prepped us for taking what is very esoteric and complicated, regulatory jargon and translating into hey, here's exactly what you need to do to be FedRAMP compliant, to be proactive, to keep your data security in compliance.
That's amazing. Thank you so much. We hear that quite a bit in terms of fast scaling companies. You get stuck with the architecture, you can't change. And one of the things that's really common with the customer base that we're serving here in LA community is that they start small and then they blow up like overnight, right? So I think having that ability to just keep the regulatory pace, on par with innovation is critical. So I really appreciate that. Talk to me about what it took internally with your management. I know you guys have investors and things like that, doing a proactive investment into this, right? What did that take and how did the company react, the board and things like that when it came to just proactively investing in good security?
Yeah, it was certainly an interesting conversation to have. I think, the cost is certainly not zero. There's an old adage in the startup world, which is coined by Facebook. They say move fast and break things. And that's generally what they tell startups to do. You're not established, just go fast. We took a bit of a different approach where we told them, hey, we want to get this compliance. It is going to slow us down, but for good reason. Operationally, it's completely transformed how we operate as a company. We now have proper policies in place that are going to set us up for the future foundation of growth. We're working with well over 150 customers, and we plan to, double, triple, 5x that over the next year. And having the policies in place that lets us scale without worrying about issues with customer data is a huge peace of mind and well worth the money spent.
That's amazing. So aside of business for Ignyte, we do a lot of audits, right? One of the things that as auditors, we're always looking for problems, but can never point to solutions. Your company does an amazing job when it comes to compliance, AS 9100 and things like that. So if you could just kind of highlight what are some of the security implementations? What are some of the things you have done in security that could put that concern at bay for customers that might be looking to purchase the ground control software for their quality department?
Yeah, at the end of the day, it's all about reducing risk, right? We want to know, how are you preventing risk? How are you controlling who accesses data? How do they access it? How do they safeguard it? How do they encrypt it? But more importantly, when things do inevitably go wrong, how do you mitigate these situations? How do you triage them quickly? And how do you have a plan in place to get things back to the proper state of operation?
So Mehul, thank you for that. I think an investment in security, as a cyber firm, can't go wrong. We're biased, but that's what our belief is. But we feel the same way when it comes to quality, right? We don't know much about what you do in terms of quality systems and things like that. So I guess help me understand, when you're having these conversations, what are some of the parallels you're able to draw between what security community is telling you and what you're trying to relay when it comes to quality management, supply chain, and those types of things?
Yeah, I think anyone who has worked in either quality or security will tell you that it's often seen as a cost center, right? It's often seen as a reactive. And the quality side, this is why good parts cannot be delivered on time. It's because of quality. And on the security side, it's, this is why we can't do something that we want to do because IT or security said no. But really, they should be looking at it the other way around, right? If you treat quality and security as a proactive part of your business, on the quality side, you will proactively be able to, continuously improve your processes to get better quality, to get better parts delivered on time or even faster. And on the security side, it'll put a strong foundation into place that will let you do the things you want to do at scale without, like we said, while mitigating risk. And so I'm curious what you've heard on your side of the fence when I'm sure customers come to you looking at, security as a cost center. How do you kind of handle that?
Yeah, I see them as cousins. They're very much related. And both the quality and the cybersecurity department, they need advocacy for some of the things you mentioned. And in defense, especially as a prior military guy, safety, security, quality, they all go hand in hand. Because when we're looking at the mission, it's not about revenue loss, it's more about lives potentially being lost. So we're very attuned to it. And at least the customers that we work with, some of the most critical customers in the defense space, that's how they're perceiving it, right? You're trying to launch a rocket or you're trying to get a satellite in the air. It's really not about the financial. There is a big element of that as business leaders, but also there's a huge element of what type of lives are going to be impacted. So we kind of see it in that lens, especially when we're working for the military, a commanding officer, the number of troops, how do we protect the troops is paramount. And I think that's kind of what we're seeing with even with Anthropic. How do we do this in a fully autonomous way, right or wrong? They're really after how do we save the maximum amount of troops so we don't have casualties. So I actually see your work in that line because the parts and the components that go into these space vehicles, they got to be built with high tolerances and specifications. If you're working in defense, that's how we view it, right? If you're not in defense, sure, you can make the argument after the fact, but that's how we kind of view it in defense.
And that last point you made about the supply chain, that really is one of the things we want to solve, right? The supply chain today, especially when it comes to quality data, is incredibly paper-based and fragmented, right? This is drawings, this is technical data, this is inspection data, all living in PDFs, Excel spreadsheets, Google Sheets. And this siloed information makes it very hard for the end products, the products that are going to the warfighter to be proactively improved, continuously improved. And that's one thing that we want to solve with ground control is how can we build a centralized platform that aggregates data from the OEMs, flown down all the way to the tier 3 component manufacturers, and provides an area where this data can be shared, centralized, and essentially used to improve products and bring products to market faster, really.
So when it comes to highly regulated industries, especially the defense industrial base, we work within both classified and unclassified side. Trust is important. It's the most important thing that I think gets sometimes overlooked. And security and compliance and quality management are key pillars of that. So if you're a CFO or legal counsel or a procurement lead, Mehul, from your perspective, what else should these leaders be looking at when it comes to just increasing the trust in the defense industrial base?
I think the number one answer here is invest in quality, right? Like I said earlier, quality is thought of as a cost center, but really it should be thought of as an investment, right? These are products that our troops are going to use. These are products that, you and I and everyone watching this will be on a commercial airplane at some point in their life. And it's incredibly important that these products are built to a high quality standard. At the end of the day, OEMs really care about two things. Are we getting the parts on time, and are the parts good quality? And I'm curious what your answer to the same question would be.
I think the third most important pillar is investment, because you could do all these things. You could do quality, security, but if you don't have the right backing and the investment from the CFO, it's not going to get done right. So even though an investment is not an activity that's traditionally seen in a company where departments are built out, but I think putting that in the forefront, kind of like what you said, go fast, break things. You can't just afford to go fast and break things when it comes to wartime equipment. I think investment is the number one priority a leader should look at if they're serious about information security, protecting aggregated data, as well as fundamentals of quality. And then I think the second thing is around culture. A lot of times what we say is you can spend all the money that you want, but if I don't have the voice of the leadership, nothing is getting done. You're just paying for something, but you're not really actually getting the benefit of it. So let's kind of back up, Mehul, because obviously you're one of those leaders that saw the future, invested, and now you're reaping the benefits of it. Customers are coming to you. You guys have done a fantastic job. In some degrees, you're eating your own dog food. Tell me a little bit about the challenges you faced in getting through FedRAMP, because that's what other leaders are going to face today, right? What are some of the challenges that you have seen with FedRAMP, culturally, financially, from any perspective when it comes to your organization?
Yeah, as a leader at ground control, really the biggest thing we think about whenever taking on these kind of investments is ROI, right? People often look at a price and get sticker shock, especially when it comes to things like security investments. But if something costs $1 million, but it's going to guarantee you $2 million in revenue, anyone in the world would take that deal, right? It's free money. And so that's how we think about FedRAMP, right? Although it will cost us money, that investment will pay itself over, tenfold, because it will lead to more opportunity for contracts, more opportunities for growth, and it sets the foundation to make sure that the customers we do have trust us with their data.
So Mehul, I know you guys are still in the middle of the journey. You got an audit scheduled and all those kinds of things. But when it comes to FedRAMP, you talked about ROI, all of these different initiatives for security that you're undertaking. What does success look like in your mind, right? How do you define success when it comes to doing these types of things?
Yeah, I think if you had asked me that, 6 months ago, success would have been getting the certification, getting our moderate equivalency. Now I think success is really, what does the next 5 to 10 years look like, right? Getting the certification is one thing, but keeping up the continuous improvement, making sure we pass the audit every time we come by it, that's really what success looks like. We preach to our customers continuous improvement. How do we bring that into our own organization, which will lead to things like bureaucracy, will lead to things like slowing down, but all for good cause. That's what success looks like to us.
Yeah, I always say, step back to step forward, right? Because unfortunately, security can slow things down, but it always increases velocity once the processes are set.
Max, one thing I'm curious about from your end, we talk to hundreds of customers, hundreds of prospective customers. There's a lot of confusion in the air right now. There's a lot of jargon. There's 1,000 different acronyms in security, just like there are in quality. How do you work with your customers to kind of help them understand what is actually required, what is not required, what are they being told to do versus what should they actually do?
That's a great question, Mehul. We see that quite a bit. There's all these programs. I'm going to use some acronyms: CMMC, FedRAMP, ITAR. There's hundreds of these programs. I think the key for us is understanding how that business makes money. And our number one goal is how do we protect that revenue stream? Because we're not in the business of just doing security because we want to do security. The car must go in order for us to care about the seatbelt. So I think once we understand how they make money, how they generate value for their organization and others, we then start to look at the primary legislator, whether they're working within the defense industrial base, healthcare, so on and so forth. And then we also look at their relationships, right? That kind of frames up who is the enforcer. In the DIB, we got the Cyber AB and the DCMA, Defense Contract Management Agency. And then, of course, if you're a second tier supplier, you've got your prime contracts that are telling you what to do. Fundamentally focusing on how the business operates is key to figuring out what's actually required. And then the second thing we try to layer in is the future. Where is the business going? Whether you're innovating as a SaaS product company. So there are some product certifications, like FedRAMP is one of them. And then you have corporate certifications like CMMC is actually tied to your corporation. So depending on what you sell, how you sell it, how you go to market, we try to not over-engineer because there's actually quite a bit to do. And that's why we work with CEOs and the leadership, because they're trying to solve the same problem, right? What do I need to do today to survive and grow? Because eventually, most CEOs I work with, they want to do the right thing. It's just a matter of timing.
That makes a ton of sense. And actually leads to a follow-up question, which is, what is one piece of advice, if there is any one piece, you would give to organizations that are preparing for CMMC Level 2 or FedRAMP?
I think the most important thing I can tell them is there are no shortcuts. Like you mentioned earlier, you guys talk to a lot of different organizations, some of the most expensive ones and some that are startup-y, I guess, There are shortcuts, but they're not so significant that you can't do the fundamentals. So I think an appropriate investment before you get into this, I always say, if your trip is from here to India, you don't want to end up in Africa, right? Complete that journey, make sure there's enough investment lined up. From a leadership perspective, that's important because you want none of that cost to be sunk cost. From a technology perspective, we can write all the paperwork in the world with GPTs, that's easy. But making that accurate to your actual technology, that's the next challenge. Bringing along the technologist, the future builder, CTO, CIO, and helping them understand that it's not just paperwork, because you're going to pay $500,000 and up on just generating paperwork. You might as well turn it into an asset. So I think from a leadership perspective, those are my biggest takeaway is don't burn the money, turn that into an asset that helps your company.
It's funny that you say there are no shortcuts. I certainly agree with that, but our experience with Ignyte has been so efficient and so seamless that it's felt like, what we've managed to accomplish in 6 months, it felt like it would have taken us years without Ignyte. The fact that we have a dedicated Slack channel, the fact that we get very good advice, even if that advice is, don't do this, do it this way instead. It may be more expensive, but it's the right thing to do by you and by your customers. And we certainly appreciate that. The whole ground control team does.
Thank you so much, Mehul. We love working with you guys, and we always recommend you guys to many of our customers.